here for Digital Muscle. I'm with the great Lee Haney. We call him the great gifter. He got a gift in 1991 in Orlando, Florida.
Yeah, that wasn't a gift.
But we're going to find out. We're going to find out. You actually did. Because when you got undressed, I was like, okay, who else is there I got to beat? And then I forgot about Dorian. I totally forgot about Dorian. I was busy the whole
Hey, listen, name of the game is making money.
Yeah, and I was saying yes to everything.
Yeah, you don't say yes to everything.
You
got an economy to create.
I did. Now with the great Lee Haney, 8-time Mr. Olympia. And I say that because there's only one other person that shares that with you, and that's Ronnie Coleman, arguably the greatest of all time. But we're going to find out from Lee Haney who is the greatest of all time in bodybuilding. We know that the great Arnold Schwarzenegger had 7 Olympia titles. Phil Heath had 7 Olympia titles. Lee, what separates you from those guys, and I know you've heard this a million times, is you retired at age 31 years old, I believe it was.
Yep.
But what was more incredible is that you did the whole thing while you were married, which is a whole other dynamic on bodybuilding. Lee, thank you for having us here in your home.
Well, welcome. Glad to have you here.
In Atlanta. I was asking you, how long have you been here in this location?
We've been here for roughly 34 years.
It's interesting because you're always plural, we, and I got to give props to your wife, Shirley, because she put up with you. She made you who you are. You were very clear on that. As a matter of fact, you were almost going to walk away from bodybuilding in 1990. Your wife said, nope, you're going for another one.
Exactly, yeah.
An infamous story, but we'll get to that. Your childhood sweetheart. How old were you when you met your wife?
I saw Shirley in the 2nd grade.
Second grade.
I fell in love with her then. A little girl with a bang in her hair, a little curl, and a little bunny rabbit teeth. Woo.
Wow.
I don't know what happened, but it happened fast.
Yeah. So, well, in terms of love at first sight, what age were you when you actually got married?
She was 22, I was 23.
So that was an interesting time in your career because I think I first got wind of your name when I started bodybuilding in '83. By that time, and I know your history very well, I'm a student of the game. I think you won the junior nationals and you won the teenage nationals in '79.
Yeah, right, 79.
And then you won the junior national championships.
Right, 82.
And then you won the very first national championships the same
82,
year.
that's right.
And you went into your first Olympia. I should digress. You went into the Night of Champions first, right?
Well, yes, I went into the Night of Champions, and it could have been a Caesar's Palace World.
Yeah, I think it was Caesar's Palace.
Grand Prix first.
Right. And
I won that show. Then I think the Night of Champions came later.
And did you win that show?
Well, yeah, I won that one too. Sure.
And you never lost again. You never lost.
Well, until I reached that first Olympia.
The first Olympia. That's what I want to get. That's when I started bodybuilding. So, and there's people out there trying to correct me already. They love it when I'm wrong. 1983 is when I started bodybuilding. Samir Banu was Mr. Olympia.
Right.
And you were 3rd place behind Muhammad Makawi.
Yes.
And where was that?
That was in Germany. Yeah. Matter of fact, Albert Butzek put on that show, and incredible event.
Yeah.
I had a great time, man. You know, there I was on the stage with legends like Muhammad Makawi, Frank Zane, I think Roy Callender, Robbie was there, Jessica Wilcox, Albert Beckles. I mean, it was absolutely incredible.
Was that the first time out of the country for you?
No.
Okay.
I won the IFBB World Championship in Belgium.
Okay.
So that was the first time out of the country. But being there, amongst those icons, the guys that I watched growing up, was absolutely amazing. Because I was able to catch the tail end of an era.
Absolutely.
That few had a chance to experience.
Yeah.
And there I was, the new kid on the block, the baby, being amongst those giants.
Now, mind you, Chris Dickerson had won the 1982 Olympia. The late Chris Dickerson, he just passed
Yes.
About a month or so ago. One of the legends and a big influence.
Yes.
This is a guy that was my size. Muhammad Makawi was smaller than me.
Yes.
What did you feel when you got 3rd place behind Makawi? Now, mind you, it's your first Olympia. It's an honor to be there.
Right.
But Muhammad Makawi was probably half your size. Was it discouraging for you?
No, it wasn't, man. I was just happy to be there. It was an honor to be there. I recall one of the pictures we took together after Muhammad had defeated me in one of the events. I raised him up on my shoulder,
Yeah.
you know. We had fun, man.
It looked like a great time back
Yeah,
then.
it was a great time, but listen, I really learned a lot from having did the first series of those European Grand Prix,
Right.
in which Muhammad was there, all the different guys were there, Dave Johns, all the different legends, but I got waxed the whole deal. I mean, I played second and third in some of them, did great, Bertrell Fox and so forth, but to watch Muhammad use all of his strengths
Yes.
when he presented was incredible.
Artist.
You know, you never saw him at a bad angle. He was very good at angling and showing his best poses. Few people understand that.
Yeah.
You're just good about, I see some guys using Lee Librado poses. What? You're not Lee Librado.
Correct.
Lee understood and understands, and you were a master at that too. Not that you had any weaknesses, but you use your physique to your advantage to present that advantage.
Right.
Never to present a disadvantage.
Do you think those lessons came in hindsight when you were losing to those guys that rookie season
Oh
on
yeah,
that tour?
oh yeah, man. I was only 23 years old, and I'm on the stage with the legends and having a chance to watch them and learn how they would prepare for a show, peaking for a show. I learned stuff from watching Albert and, you know, Frank Zane and all of that, man. I just sucked up the knowledge, and I was just happy to be there.
Yeah, do you think that's true for the majority of the pros? I felt the same way you did. I was down in the middle of the pack in my first Olympian, like 13th place. But I was in awe of the guys that were in the magazines that were in front of me. I was more of a fan than I was a competitor. But nonetheless, you came out and you were third in your first Olympia, not used to losing. What was that paycheck like? What'd you get? What'd you get for third place in your first Olympia?
You don't remember?
I don't remember. I'll tell you, I believe Samir Banu won $25,000 in the 1983 Olympia. Does that help? If I had to guess, I'm gonna think you probably got like $5,000 somewhere around.
Probably.
It's all
probably.
right.
I don't even remember this.
But here's the
Great
thing.
that I don't.
Here's the thing that's different about your era. Like, I knew what first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, all the way down to like 10th place paid out because I wanted to be a professional.
You know, I
bodybuilder.
think during our era it's more about the compassion.
Yeah.
You know, Arnold didn't really train to get what I think Arnold got 7,000 back
Got
then.
$1,000.
1,000.
Yeah.
It was all about the love and the passion for the sport.
You think that's gone now? It's a business?
I think it's more of a business now. It's a business that's driving people to do some crazy things.
Yeah.
You know, it was all about health during that era.
Sure.
And I would say all the way into my era, you look at myself, my Christian, yourself, we still feel good, we're still functional.
Yeah.
And we looked at it that way. We had fun. I think near the tail end of my era, it started to be more about the finances and that kind of deal.
Became a business. Is that true because of the ancillary businesses that were popping up? We saw like the
Yes.
tanning companies,
Yes.
the bikini companies, the show promoters. I mean, everyone was making money but the bodybuilders, and finally we found a way to kind of like start making
Yes.
dollars out of these nickels and
Which
dimes.
was smart.
Yeah.
We needed to do that because most of us, we ended up, just being a gym owner.
Yeah.
You know, not saying nothing's wrong with that, but I had at least 4 different gyms myself.
Yeah, you had to find ways to monetize
Yeah,
your career.
Exactly. You had to turn all of that hard work into some type of an economy.
Yeah.
And that has grown tremendously today, because a lot of guys have their own supplement companies. They have their own personal training companies. I mean, so a lot of great things are happening now because of the growth of the industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you got to make money at the end of the day. That's the name of the game.
Yeah, I mean, people start bodybuilding now thinking this is going to be my profession, right? And that's
Yeah.
my business. We know that the Olympia's gone from when Arnold won $1,000 to now $400,000 for the first time.
Wow, man, I wish I was getting that 400,000.
You're in the 80s, and this is a prime time of my youth and the admiration for what you were doing, not thinking I would ever be able to do what you were doing. But here we are in 1983, you're third place, Muhammad Makwe, Samir Banu, you're in the conversation.
Right.
And I'm graduating in 1984, and here you are winning your first Olympia. Was that something you foresaw happening after you got third place in the Olympia? And what did you change? What advice did you get to ultimately allow you to win that title?
Well, winning it in 1984, I felt that, yes, I mean, I walked into the show being 100% confident that I would win it.
Because of the previous year?
Because of the previous year. And what happened in the previous year, I peaked at 243 pounds. Nobody's ever did that before. And I recall Arnold seeing me at World's Gym, and he looks at me and said, Lee, how are you in this type of condition 4 weeks away from the show? And I just shrugged my head like, this is just me. Not knowing what I was doing other than just training hard and, doing what I could as far as my knowledge to prep. 243 pounds. But then 4 weeks later, on the way 233 pounds.
You started dropping.
I started dropping. I started losing muscle because I didn't understand what was happening with my body. So I hadn't really got a handle on how to deal with my physique.
Right.
Of course, I won the junior national, the national, the IFBB World Championship, but that's a whole nother category.
It's amateur.
And it's amateur, but when you go into this next level,
yeah,
you're standing up against the best of the best.
Right.
So you really have to have your stuff together. And so having placed third and having lost 10 pounds, I needed something or a bit of knowledge to find out what went wrong. And because I documented what I did in the way of training, in the way of supplementation, in the way of nutrition, I had a roadmap to go back to.
Okay.
So I sat down with, guess who? Dr. Fred Hatfield. Fred was a dear friend of mine.
Yes.
Fred was a whole wealth of knowledge on a whole nother level.
Powerlifter.
Although he was a power lifter, but
Right.
he still understood the dynamics of how muscle and nutrition and how that worked. And Fred simply said, Lee, after looking over my program, he said, you can't train like a horse and eat like a bird.
Good analogy.
Man,
Right.
my body started eating itself up and started feeding on this muscle.
Right.
So guess what? We went back in and I incorporated more calories in the way of protein, specifically carbohydrates. And so it put me in a place where I stayed full during the whole time. And guess what? 1983, 84 Mr. Olympia, I went in the show at 243 pounds.
Now to give some context, I believe Arnold Schwarzenegger was 229, like at his best, maybe 230, and he was 6'1". You're 5'10".
Yeah, I heard Joe said that too, Joe Weider.
Yeah, you're 5'10", 5'11", and 240. Like you said, the world had not seen someone carry this kind of size proportionately with the small waist, which you were known for. But it's arguably that all the Olympia winners win the Olympia on the back. And clearly, when you turn around at the back, it seemed like it was just lights out for most bodybuilders. We just didn't have the width to stand with you. Of course, until maybe the end of your career, when you were challenged by six-time Mr. Olympia, Dorian Yates. We'll get to that because we're now leapfrogging. You win the 84 Olympia, the first of 8 consecutive wins. Which one was the most important? Which one stood out the most? And I'll give you some context. Which year was the most challenging, most competitive, hardest to get up for, most memorable? Which one do you, out of those 8 trophies, really relish?
Well, Sean, I would say the last Mr. Olympia, 1991, the last.
I am really surprised by that answer.
And the last were different in the way that it was my last set and my best set.
Okay.
And one of the other things that stood out was my training system for that year. Because I had found in previous years, I would use the 3-on-off-1 in all season. And as I got about 6, and on season, as I got about 6 weeks away, 5 weeks, I would go to a straight 6.
Okay.
Which caused me to overtrain.
Yeah.
So the last 3 days for the competition, after I had discontinued training in order for the cell to fill out, to peak properly, it left me sort of concerned because my legs were always somewhat fatigued and didn't pop like I wanted them to. And so for the last Olympia, I stayed with the 3-on-off-1. I didn't convert to a straight 6.
Okay, so you didn't overtrain?
I didn't overtrain. Gave my body enough time to recover, and I stayed full the entire time.
What did you weigh that year?
254 pounds.
So it's 1991, Orlando, Florida, the weekend Lee Labrada conceived Hunter Labrada. If you don't know who Hunter Labrada is,
yeah, Lee Tobin.
Go
he
look
was
him
having
up.
a good time, wasn't he? He wanted another way, right?
Yeah, he made his own $10.
He sure did.
So, and ultimately Lee wound up in 4th place, and he was nipping at your heels in 1989 and 90, a two-time first Olympia runner-up, who's now the CEO of Labrada Nutrition. You named him Lee the Fleet.
Yeah, Lee the Fleet.
Lee the Fleet had nicknames for some of these guys, but in 91, you're barely 31 years old, you're walking off into the sunset when most guys are barely catching their stride. And in today's economy, we see a 31-year-old bodybuilder young.
Right.
Because the guys are competing so much later in their career. But I also don't believe a lot of them have the foundation you built as a teenage national champion. Because although you won the national championships as a teenager, you started a couple of years before you actually won. Like
Right.
you were already building the base. Most guys today start lifting weights in their 20s. You're done. You're sailing off into the sunset at 31 years old with your 8th stand-down trophy. Most guys would have said they're first because the impossible has now become possible. I was there 13 times, along with a lot of other guys, Kevin Lavroni, Flex Wheeler. We were all nipping at the heels, and Vince Taylor trying to get one. And it's really odd that you would say it's your last one, because at that time, you would think you're picking up steam. You figured it all out. You have the right formula. But were you running out of gas?
I wouldn't say that. I think I was running out of that particular mission.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've always looked at bodybuilding, number one, my passion, I love it, but also looked at it as building my economy.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, when I was stuck between with the decision of whether to go into college to play football because I wanted to be Jim Brown,
Yeah.
or get into bodybuilding, my dad said to me, son, you know, because I had a scholarship to go to Lipstone College in Salisbury, North Carolina. He said to me, son, because I was, you know, trying to make a decision, will I stay in school to play football or get into bodybuilding? My dad said, well, son, can you make any money at that? I said, Dad, I don't know. You know, that's always a father's concern.
Yeah.
Whatever choice you make, you better be able to take care of yourself and your family. And so I looked at bodybuilding as my job too. It was my job. You know, it was never something that was something that I live for.
Right.
Like some people, you know, if I don't win, if I don't do this, then that's the end of the world for me. It was a job for me. I work hard, and if I do so, I get a bonus.
Yeah.
So I've always kept it in that perspective. So after the 8th Olympia, I said, okay, now I've achieved on that level in this particular area of my life. What's next?
What no one ever accomplished. You've also broken Arnold Schwarzenegger's record.
Yes, I did what they said nobody else would be able to do. So I accomplished that. So okay, now let's take the same seeds of faith and hard work and put it in other areas of my life, which meant my business. You know, I had the Animal Kingdom, the World Class Fitness Center.
You had both of your kids at that
Universal
time?
Fitness Center. Yes, I had both of my kids. I had Joshua around the fourth Olympia. Then my daughter Olympia came in 1990, right for the last Olympia.
Right.
So I had my kids. All of these things I was doing. I had a show afterwards on ESPN, Lee Haney's Championship Workout.
I remember.
It was shown on the Trinity Broadcast Network. So all of these different dynamics, which was a part of which I guess was given flight by the sport of bodybuilding, was new opportunities.
Well,
you look where Lou is. When the Incredible Hulk
Right.
opportunity lended itself, he went off in that direction.
Yeah.
You look what Arnold did too. Once, you know, so that's what you got to think. You got to think economy.
Well, and
I cannot eat any of those trophies.
no, but I did watch you walk away from the sport with $1 million contract with Twin Labs. See, there's some things I know about them that maybe some of you guys don't, but I'm going to educate you today. You signed a 5-year deal with Twin Labs on the way out.
Right.
And of course we wanted you to stay and stick around because everyone wanted to exact their revenge. Give me one more crack. Some of us were getting better as we were getting older, and you were getting better. Some people thought maybe they wanted to hang around one more time to have the rubber match with Dorian Yates in Helsinki, Finland. So how was that for you in 1992? You pretty much, I don't think you made a formal microphone retirement speech at that time. So 92 rolls around. We're in Helsinki, Finland. Dorian Yates elevates himself from second to first. He wins his first Olympia. In Europe, he's from England. It's a big, big market for him. You were at home. What did it feel like to, you spent 9 consecutive years doing this, and now it's the Olympia weekend, and you're nowhere to be found. What was going on? You weren't watching it on television. I mean, what were you doing?
Man, I tell you, one thing about being a father, being a husband, all of those things were the number one priority for me. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, being able to support and take care of my family, that was a priority. So I was so focused on those things that I didn't focus on being on the stage. That was the last thing on my mind.
So did someone call you and say, hey, Lee, here's the results of the 92 Olympia, or were you trying to figure it out? Were you interested at all?
I was interested because I love the sport of bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And I knew, at least I didn't know, but I sort of had a pretty good inkling if Dorian placed second to me, mm-hmm. then he would win, because at that point in bodybuilding, they were saying, okay, we want people that are guys that are big, and that's what Dorian represented.
Yeah.
He could, could sort of stand toe to toe to me as far as size was concerned. And so that's where bodybuilding was headed off to. So it was my era.
Yeah. So did you think it changed after that? Because a lot of people say that Dorian changed the game. Even though you won 8, they said Dorian is the game changer.
He changed I said the game changed as far as what judges wanted to see in that era. I don't think it's changed as far as
quality.
The quality. Matter of fact, I think the particulars as it relates to where we from. Mm-hmm. When I say we, I came up saying, okay, you got to look like Robbie, you got to look like Arnold, you got to look like Frank Zane.
Combination.
If you can be those combinations, then that's Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
That's what the bodybuilding world said it wanted to look like. Mm-hmm. It wanted to be. So we imitated those type of physiques.
Right.
I thought Dorian had more of a power lifter's physique.
Yeah. He ushered in like guys like Nasser and Gunther and some of the bigger Paul Dillette. He kind of opened the door for the guys to really supersize things.
And nothing wrong with being supersized, as long as the body parts are finished, polished physique, and finished and in the right place with good muscle separation.
But what do you say?
The beauty of the physique.
But what do you say when people say the 90s is the golden era? You stopped at 91.
Yeah, listen, when you moving on to the 90s, okay, you were there. Mm-hmm. Lee was still there. Chris Cormier was there. You had some, Flex Wheeler,
Vince Taylor,
Kevin LeVaron, Vince. Yes, you still have beautiful physiques.
Yeah.
But in the latter part of that, when it started to sort of get all over the place, I'm like, okay, where is this going?
Yeah, now when we get to that latter part, the guy that really changed the game is Ronnie Coleman. In 98, Ronnie Coleman comes in, looked like he was double your size.
Yes.
He won one of his Olympias, I believe he was 287 pounds, I believe he won one of those titles. Arguably, a few of us thought maybe 1 or 2 he shouldn't have won because he was just too big, maybe not as defined as some people would want him, but because his size was so elevated and so singular, there was no one that could outmuscle Ronnie.
No.
He would become his own worst enemy in terms of pushing it maybe too far, and then there was no coming back, and of course Jay Cutler would upset him in 2005, I believe it was. But Ronnie Coleman spent the better part of his career at the back of the pack.
Sure did, yeah.
1992.
And I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, 92 when Dorian won, which you predicted, Ronnie was dead last in 92. But he fought and got beat up on for 5 years, and in 98 he won his first Mr. Olympia, and then he chased you down. What did you feel when Ronnie Coleman tied your record?
You know what, I felt, as Arnold said he felt, when I broke his record. He said records are made to be broken.
Right.
So I felt great about that because, listen, anyone that would have that type of staying power to endure that level of training, and Ronnie was a whole nother level of training.
You ever train as heavy as you've seen him train?
No, I would never do that because, see, you got to understand the dynamics of where I'm from is bodybuilding science. Where Ronnie's from is powerlifting.
Yeah.
And in powerlifting, you see what? Large, huge guys, huge body parts.
Right.
So it was two different psyches of training going on there. You know, I would never even attempt to lift that kind of weight because I knew it's not necessary, not for what I wanted to accomplish.
Right.
You know, but in that new era, you know, past Doherty, that's a whole nother world.
So we just celebrated 40 years of the NPC National Championships, of which you were the pioneer. You were the first. Kind of like Gaspari was the first Arnold Classic champion, and Larry Scott was the first Olympia champ. I mean, there's very few firsts that we have here. You're the first guy to get 8 Olympia titles. But you came from another federation, which Jim Mannion actually had to compete against before he started the National Physique Committee. There was the AAU. Right. Which was at the time the longest running amateur federation, which I think had also a combination of powerlifting and stuff. You couldn't have been in there very long, but your idols that were before you, Robbie Robinson and some of the guys, they came from that area. You had the WABA, NABA. You had all these alphabet soup federations. Was the NPC a decision to go to because it was in its proximity to you? Or did you just, hey, there's a contest, I'm going to do it. It happened to be NPC. What was your introduction into all that?
Well, I did win the AAU Mr. Teenage America in 1979. Then I placed 4th in the Mr. USA in 1980.
Do you know who won that, 1980?
I think it was Dave Rogers.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when the AAU was real popular during that time. Now, moving forward, as far as then of course the Junior Nationals, I think that was the first NPC.
NPC, okay.
The Junior Nationals, which I won that one,
Yeah.
1982. Now, moving forward, you know, there was a lot going on as far as questioning, well, which of these federations can take you to
the promised land.
the promised land?
Did you have to deal with any of that? I mean, you had to economize
Well,
any of it?
I had to find out what was real and what wasn't.
Okay.
I had to, you know, investigate to find out the truth.
Right.
So in doing so, me and some of my friends, I had a gym called the Olympia Fitness Center, Spartanburg, South Carolina. So me and my buddies got together and said, listen, let's make sure we're clear about what's happening as I prepare for this next show. So we called the NPC office and had a special a conversation with Mr. Jim Mannion
In Carnegie, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. And Mr. Mannion said, if you're wanting to make your way to the Mr. Olympia, you know, the top of the top, cream of the crop in bodybuilding, it has to go by way of the NPC.
Well, that would be normal for a president of the NPC to say.
Yeah. But what was different, he had joined forces with Joe and Ben Weeder.
Oh,
That was a caveat there. So in that conversation, it all made sense.
Yeah.
Whereby I had someone else who was a professional bodybuilder, I'm not going to name that person, to say to me, well, the AAU is the way to get to the Mr. Olympia, which was a lie, wasn't true.
Okay.
And so I'm glad I made the right decision.
But in hindsight, there have been some guys, Tony Pearson, Vince Taylor, Robbie, that did do the AAU. I actually won the Teenage AAU Los Angeles in 1983, only because the NPC didn't have a teenage category. And it wasn't very political at the time because it was all kind of new and the athletes we didn't really know.
We just wanted to compete.
But at the end of the day, by the time I arrived in 87 at the National Championships, I know that Vince Taylor was coming over from winning the AAU Mr. America, and several other AAU guys were coming over. Vince Comerford as well, the class of 87. But as an athlete, the federations didn't mean anything. We wanted to follow you. You were the original. We saw what the NPC did for you in your career, and then you were pursued by Bob Paris, Mike Christian, Phil Williams, Gary Stradham, and then I joined the suit in 1987. So I felt like following in your footsteps because you laid them. This is the only way to get there, and it seems like now that is the only way to get to the Olympia. As it turns out, we don't even know where the AAU is. On the
Exactly.
landscape.
I mean, when I was competing, particularly on the amateur level, I recall, you know, bodybuilding being secondary to powerlifting.
Right.
We would go on the stage sometime at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning after all the powerlifting was over.
Yeah.
And so that's why I relish the fact that Mr. Jim Mannion, our president, gave bodybuilding its own personality, gave it a future.
Yes.
You know, and he went as far as to make sure that that was with the powers that be in the sport, and that was Joe and Ben Weider.
And then you wind up on the Olympia stage a year later after winning the Nationals, and now you have to deal with Joe and Ben. And what was that dynamic like? Because you're in South Carolina,
Right.
and suddenly you were out in Woodland Hills.
Oh,
Talk
man.
about living the dream.
That was incredible. I recall his editor-in-chief at that time, Bill Reynolds.
Yes, the late
Gave
Bill
me a
Reynolds.
call. Yes, Bill was an awesome guy, man, and said, Lee, Joe would like for you to come to California, do a photo shoot, meet him, and talk and have some discussions. And man, that was like a dream come true.
Mm-hmm.
So Joe flew me out there, and it was at that time that he offered me opportunity to come to have a contract under him, train under him, and be a part of the whole California singing there.
And
man,
gave your wife a job.
gave my wife a job. He said, one thing Joe said to me, he said, Lee, is there a girl you're crazy about? I said, matter of fact, there is. He said, well, listen, it's very important to have a good foundation and stabilization for a young man. That was some of the best advice, fatherly advice coming from Joe that he gave me. And he said, if you want to bring her out, which I strongly advise, he said, I would make sure that she would have a job at the Weider Center. And so,
What a contrast.
What
You know
a
why? Because
contrast,
for me, my mentor, John Brown, said women are like kryptonite. The only thing that's going to ruin your chances of becoming Mr. Olympia is falling in love and having to choose. So the dynamic of being single and solo, pursuing the selfish dream of changing the way I look to compete with the world's best was my mentality every single year. For your mentality, you had to deal with your wife. So was there some struggles in that? That's got to be a delicate balance.
you know something? It's amazing. A lot of people thought that or think that. I remember Shirley was asked by a young lady, I can't remember, a lady said, well, it must be hard, being married to Lee, being a bodybuilder and having to do all those sacrifices. Shirley said, no, it's not.
She was an athlete.
She was an athlete.
Right.
Shirley was an athlete.
That helps.
But she said, no, it's not, because I've always, as I said earlier, looked at bodybuilding as a job. Because listen, my mindset was, had I not won the NPC Nationals in 1982, I was going into professional wrestling.
Right. You're going to go
I
get
had a
her.
degree in law enforcement, juvenile corrections.
Okay.
So I had another alternative had I not, because I'm realistic. You either got it or you don't.
Right.
Period.
And a lot of people don't realize
So
that.
it happened, I had it. And so when Joe said that he would make sure that the two of us was taken care of with employment and so forth, man, there we go. I remember saying to Shirley, okay, I got an opportunity to go to California here. I don't know what's out there, but Mr. Weider offered me a contract, and he said it'd also give you a job at the Weider Center if you needed it.
So it's teamwork.
It was teamwork.
Yeah.
It's always been team, because the foundation of how I grew up with a mother and a father in the household, Shirley with a mother and a father in the household, and then a spiritual foundation, because the word of God said, the man that finds a wife finds a good thing and finds favor in the sight of God and in the sight of man. And he said it's not, and then he says in the book of Genesis, it's not good for him to be alone, so I will make him a helpmeet. So Shirley was my helpmeet, as a woman is to a man. He's not her dictator, but his helper to help make him more complete.
Did you work out with her?
Oh yeah, Shirley was my training partner on many occasions. Many occasions.
Did you cook for her? Or she cooked for you?
Well, we cooked for each other. As it still happens today.
That's teamwork.
I do more cooking than she do most
You're
of the
retired
time.
now. You gotta cook.
Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting
Teamwork.
It's an interesting dynamic, because a lot of people fail in that department because it is stressful economically and emotionally.
Yeah.
And with the travel scenario where you have to go and you're gone and
Well, Shirley traveled over 30 different countries with me.
yeah, she's
We went all over the world, and finally she said, I'm tired of traveling, I want to have some babies. So that's when Johnson and Olympia started happening after that, but we were always together as a team.
Yeah,
Always.
well, and now you're a grandfather of three. And before we jump that far ahead, so there's been a lot of things happening, and I know you've been witnessing a lot of bodybuilders we know have passed away.
Right.
And it seems like we can't go a year without someone else making another headline. These are not murder-suicide deaths. A lot of them we call bodybuilding-related deaths. This did not exist when you were coming up. It wasn't happening in the 80s. It didn't happen very often in the 90s. I remember some of the names that stood out were Mohammed bin Aziza, Andreas Munzer in the 90s, and we were all taken aback, but it was like one or two people here or there. And now it seems like every year the Deadpool roster is being added to with more and more frequency, and we've just had the late Mr. Olympia Sean Roden pass away, and of course Mr. Olympia Chris Dickerson at 82 years old. The circumstances were very different.
Very different. And the fact that you look at, then you have Dave Draper, 79.
Yeah.
You look at Chris, 82, 83. They live long lives.
Yeah.
You know, Larry Scott, a long life past 70.
Yeah.
What is that saying? Well, that era of bodybuilders thought about health, fitness, and wellness.
Right.
It was all about the health. It wasn't about get big and turn into a mutant at all costs.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, the sport is paying for it. Athletes are paying for it because the mindset is totally different.
I did an interview a long time ago, and I said size kills. And it seemed like as I was going down this roster that's in my head, the bodybuilders that were dying were big people. Nasser El-Sambari, Art Atwood, Greg Kovacs. I mean, these guys were abnormally big. And that era came when you just got out. And in the early 90s, we saw the steroid movement with the WWF bodybuilding, and also filtered into the bodybuilding industry. And they started testing in 1990, and then it kind of just disappeared. You move into the 2000s, and slowly we start to see more and more people going, not only men, but also women.
Yes.
And it sounded like it was a diuretic situation. The diuretics are taking these people out, but now we know that it's more than diuretics. So we didn't have the coaches, we didn't have the gurus, and I think some of those, I've always attributed that a lot of the gurus have their fingerprints on it, but they're hiding in the shadows.
Yes.
Is the responsibility and the onus on the athlete kind of just taken away when they pass away? Because I don't think a lot of athletes are paying attention to their health checkup. I don't think a lot of athletes are getting EKGs or cardiograms for their hearts. I think they're taking a lot of advice from gurus, unknowingly or not. You've got gurus that may or may have never stepped on a stage, that don't have medical degrees or doctorate degrees advising the athletes what to do. And the athletes are blindly following them because they have a lot of people they've had success with. What's your take on how do we slow this down?
Well, you know, in our era, I always say our era, we had training partners.
Yeah.
You know, we kept our little
Sparring
tablet.
partners.
Sparring partners. Carbohydrates, protein, fats. You know, our workouts documented. We relied upon one another. You know, with my training partner, Superman, he said, "Lee, you look a little flat today. You look like you need to have a little bit more carbs." So
That's all you needed.
that's all you needed.
Yeah.
Somebody to watch and see you, and they know the rhythm of your body, the rhythm of your training system. They understand all of those dynamics.
Would you have paid him to hear that advice? Would you have paid Superman to tell you these
No,
things?
he was my training partner.
Yeah.
I tried to kill him. He tried to kill me.
I mean, look, I don't know if that was an hour or 2 hours we've been sitting here talking about the life and times of where are they now. Seems like you've done it all. You've been on the President's Council of Physical Fitness. You got the Arnold Schwarzenegger Lifetime Achievement Award, the Ben Weider Lifetime Achievement Award. You got the 8 Sandow trophies up there. Like I said earlier, we were just missing a Grammy, an Oscar, an Emmy. I'm sure that's probably in your future plans. You got the Lee Haney Games. You have your certification program going on. I mean, what else? Besides being a grandfather and an old man, how old are we now, Lee? I mean,
An old man part.
Woo! We didn't see this. You're
62.
62 years old. I mean, we could never have, when we were competing back in the day, we couldn't have solved this, all of this. I mean, you've been very blessed in a lot of different ways, but your health mainly. What's left? What's next?
Well, you know, man, you always got to have a vision. You know, always got a vision. You know, the Word of God said you perish without a vision. So you got to continue to move forward and be forward thinking. And one of my pet peeves is the mentoring piece. I've personally working with the school system here as it relates to having my mentoring program to be a part of what's happening there in the schools.
Right.
Because as you know, a lot of the teenagers in schools are struggling with morality issues now. You know, you look at what TV is saying, what newspaper, the radio is saying, what a lot of those rap music is saying, is really demoralizing. And it strips the minds of our young people. So that mentoring piece is huge for me. Years ago, Shirley and I created what is called Haney's Harvest House, which started out as on a 40-acre ranch. And we had horses, mentoring and retreats and all those type of things and teaching. But now that has grown whereby we have a program, materials that we can make available to those who want to start a similar type of mentoring program, where we teach authentic manhood, lessons of perseverance, obedience, servanthood, all of those things that makes a good character within society. So that's one of the big things that I have on my radar. I already got it there, but even more so going forward.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, your life's work has to do with your legacy. What did you leave behind you? I can't take any of those with me.
I'm taking a couple of them. I'll get rid of those for you, no problem. It's different when you never had one. Just one.
So then, that's what's important now. Pouring into the young people. I talked to a young athlete just he said the same. Well, I got an email that he didn't receive a photo that he had ordered, so something got screwed up.
Right.
So I called him personally. He said, I can't believe you picked up the telephone and called me. I can't believe you're 8-time Mr. Olympia. But I'm a human being just like he is.
But would you have recognized that in your prime? Or would it have been just kind of a distraction? It's another fan wanting another photo.
I've never backed away from touching people and trying to be there, because at the end of the day, I'm a person like anybody else. And I know God has blessed me with these gifts to use to impact the world for good. It was my prayer when I was 17. I prayed and said, Lord, if you see fit to make me the best in the sport that I love so much, I'll go before the world and give you the praise and the glory. That
we watched you do that 8 times.
8 times.
Olympia's age.
So I mean, he handled his part of the ball.
Amen.
So I got to handle mine.
You get an amen
by
for that.
being a gift in the world. That's what the whole journey is all about.
Yeah, and that's why I said you were old before your time. I mean, you were like this back then. I mean, the guys would come. You were like the father figure, even though you were the youngster. Turning pro at 22, 23 years old. 23. There was one record I really was pursuing, and that was you won the national championships. I believe you were like 22 and 8 months or something like that. And I got it at like 22 and 6 months. So I beat you, and you didn't really realize it. But if you really go back and look and do your homework, you'll see I beat you.
Me, right?
I was chasing you. I was 5 years after you. But I did get one small victory, and I got to tell you, it was an honor and privilege to catch the end of your career. And of course, I was a witness of your career in high school. The impact and the influence that you make, you don't know that you're making it, because bodybuilding, being an international sport, being a global sport, we follow in each other's footsteps. And I had the good privilege of coming up behind you and meeting Joe as well, and hearing the stories from Joe about this guy Lee, who I'm trying to one day be, and then in 1988 have the privilege of standing on stage. I think I rubbed your shoulder backstage, and I remember I'm not watching this ad, but then the chase was on. I was like, I'm gonna be this guy. I'm gonna beat this guy. My dream began in 1988 in Los Angeles. You didn't know anything about it.
But I remember seeing you in Atlanta.
92, 93, 94, 95 Olympia was held here. I remember coming back, and of course you were retired. Like everyone was hoping that you would come out of retirement to compete. Would that have been something you would have thought of?
No.
Because it came.
The
Olympia came here to your hometown.
I had no.
You were done.
I was finished.
Yeah.
Once the 8th Olympia was over, I knew that was it. I had no desire to go back, and Shirley and I, that was the plan. Listen, I was ready to opt out of the 7th one.
Yeah.
And
listen, a lot of us wish that you had it. But we were actually happy that you didn't come back. But of course, we didn't see Dorian Yates coming. But nonetheless, it's been an honor and a privilege watching that career and watching what you're doing now. And of course, we've got the Lee Haney Games coming up in November, of which I'll be rocking the mic.
Yeah, man.
We'll be supporting
Appreciate
you.
it, Sean.
Yeah, you got the full weight of
the
the digital muscle supporting you. And of course, you continue to be a beacon of light for everyone in the sport of bodybuilding. And where can they find you if they're looking for advice? Are they going to shoot you an email, or are they going on your Instagram? Where do they find you to get a hold of you?
Well, they can catch me on my website, leehaney.com.
Okay.
And from there, they can learn about the certification program. They can learn about Haney's Harvest House. They can also hit me on my Instagram.
Official Lee Haney, I think it is.
Official Lee Haney, and also Facebook.
Nice.
You know, I do a lot of stuff on Facebook. You know, a lot of messages.
Just waiting for you to send me the friend request, Lee. I'd love to see what you're doing on Facebook.
Well, you know, I got
it's only been 40
some
years.
friends that I try to avoid.
Okay,
you know?
well,
especially ones who start
we're
trouble.
gonna count those trophies. Well, that's gonna do it for here. Of where are they now in Atlanta, Georgia, with one of the greatest of all times? I say
one of the greatest of all time.
I wanted you to correct me. Eight times. The greatest.
Undefeated.
Ronnie, you know what he said?
What?
He said he's the greatest of all time. So I'm torn. What do you guys think is the greatest of all time?
He's delusional.
He's delusional, Ronnie. We're gonna break out the oil and then what does he have? The body.
Ronnie would eat me. You know, I would be his sandwich. You know.
Could you beat Ronnie Coleman? I mean,
Ronnie is listen.
on the real?
When you're looking at when it comes to mass,
Yeah.
you can't beat Ronnie.
Yeah.
When it comes to pretty,
Hey, I understand. I can relate to that one. All right, well, for the great, totally awesome Lee Haney, I'm Sean right here at Digital Muscle. Where are they now? Check us out at digitalmuscle.com.
All right, Lee, I'll see you later, brother. Take care. Have a good one.
Man, that was a great conversation with Digital Muscle. Man, awesome. So let me check here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wait a minute. What happened to 1991? What in the heck? Sean! Wait a minute. Sean, did you forget something? Hello? Got a 45, Sean. I don't think you want none of this. Come back, Sean. I don't want to do it. Don't make me do it.